First of all, I'd just like to say that this is the most makeshift lighting setup I've ever done, and I'm ridiculously proud of it. Okay, now to the actual video. So, inspiration. When I was a little kid, I loved Star Wars, right? I was born late 90s, prequels were coming out, a whole new wave of Star Wars fanatics, birthday parties all over the place with just lightsabers and kill those fake droids. That was my life. When I had friends over to play, none of this like cops and robbers stuff. It was either Star Wars or medieval swords. Yeah. Star Wars was my life. And not just Star Wars the film, but I really was into the documentaries. Which is the great segue into George Lucas was probably the only notable inspiration in my life that wasn't like a family member. Like obviously my parents are pretty much made me who I am today. But then there are a few outside things like George Lucas and his documentaries about how he made his films that showed me that, hey, filmmaking is a thing people do. And it looked really interesting to like 7-year-old Luke. And I was like, sign me up for that. It was fascinating, really. And I started dabbling. It was awful. My work from back then was just god awful. But I started, and I've improved since. And that was basically the first domino that made all the other things happen. George Lucas just started that whole train of thought that, hey, videography or writing or directing is something I could do. And I realized it's really interesting and something I might want to do. Yeah, so that was probably the only inspiration I could think of off the top of my head. Because most of my inspirations nowadays, after kind of the ball started rolling with George Lucas and films, I also somewhere along the way started being interested in computer science. I don't know where that started or if it was ignited an interest. If the interest was ignited by anyone, I think it's possible that I was like, everyone's gonna need to know this. I can make money. Money's good. And I tried it out and I was like, dang, this is cool. I think that's probably the most likely explanation. Anyway, I have something in my eye. Nowadays, I have a bit of a different system for being inspired. I'm not so much inspired by any one person. I mean, I'm inspired by people, but it's inspiration by a desire to not be the worst, and on good days be the best. So when I was a kid, I was homeschooled, and I had a bit more time to pursue hobbies than many people do. Like I could spend a day doing crappy stop-action animation videos if absolutely necessary, and I could practice and dabble, and people would always say, "Wow, that's really great," and in their head they're thinking, "For a 9-year-old," and that carried on for a couple years, and that was basically how I worked. I was good for my age, which is what you'd expect. Spielberg at 9 years old probably made some awful stuff. I have no idea. And in that sort of system, I got a little complacent because I wasn't around people who had interests that were parallel to mine. How am I going to say this? I didn't have peers that had similar interests who were better than me. I mean, a few exceptions, but for the most part, I was either the par, the standard, because I was the best I knew, or the only I knew in almost all cases, or I was not the best I knew, and that's an example of what I'm about to say, which is being inspired by the desire to be as good, if not better, than the other person. That's just how I'm inspired now. When I see someone who's better at computer science than me, I'm like, oh crap, I'm slacking, I gotta catch up. When I see someone who's much better at videography than me, I think, how is he doing that? I need to be able to do that. I'm not inspired so much by famous people, because when you are inspired by a famous person, it gets really distant, because a famous person is probably the least real type of person you can interact with. Probably next after that is an online personality. Then next to that is like a friend who's superficial. And then after that is like an actual friend who you can have heart-to-hearts with. And only in the last instance, I think, can you really truly empathize and understand someone. Empathize with and understand someone. There we go. So I think being inspired by celebrities is helpful but very limited. And I don't know. I just find myself more inspired by people who are doing better than me, and either are earlier on in their like, if someone younger than me is doing better than me, I freak out and struggle to do better. And if someone even a little older than me is doing well, I'm like, oh, I really want to be that. I really want to do that. So mostly that's how I'm inspired, and I think that's a little dangerous, but it's fairly functional. And without it, I don't think I'd really be doing much, because I've become an expert at just doing what I need to do, kind of like senioritis everywhere, or something like that. And I gotta, it's kind of funny. You see someone with good self-discipline, and you think, I really want to have as good self-discipline as them. But how do you get there? That's a different thing I gotta talk about. I should make a main channel video about that. Anyway, I think I said all the things I wanted to say. Goodbye.